Clara Brennan's hands wouldn't stop shaking as Samuel Holbrook tore their marriage contract in half. "You lied to me," he said, his voice cold as the Wyoming snow falling outside. "A barren woman is no wife to me." 23 days of travel. Every penny she had. All for 2 words that shattered her heart: get out. But before Clara could reach the door, a small voice cut through the silence. A 6-year-old girl clutching a broken doll whispered, "Papa, please. She looks like Mama." Stay until the end to discover how a rejected woman became the heart of a broken family. Subscribe now and comment your city so I can see how far this story travels. The stagecoach jerked to a stop, and Clara Brennan's forehead slammed against the wooden frame hard enough to draw blood. "Silver Creek!" the driver hollered. "End of the line, lady. God help you if you're stayin'." Clara pressed her gloved fingers to her temple. They came away red. 23 days of travel from Boston, and she was arriving to meet her future husband with blood running down her face. Perfect. Just perfect. She gathered her carpetbag with trembling hands. Everything she owned fit inside 3 dresses, her mother's Bible, a daguerreotype of her dead husband William, and the letters. 6 months of letters from Samuel Holbrook, promising her a home, a family, a second chance at life. "I'm a simple man with simple needs," he'd written. "My children need a mother. I need a partner. Come to Wyoming and we'll build something good together." Simple needs. Clara almost laughed. If only he knew how complicated she was. The cold hit her like a physical blow when she stepped down from the coach. Wyoming in December was nothing like Boston winter. This cold had teeth. It bit through her wool coat, her cotton dress straight down to her bones. "Mrs. Brennan." Clara turned toward the voice. A man stood 10 feet away, hat in his hands, shoulders broad enough to block out the gray sky behind him. Samuel Holbrook. He looked older than his photograph, harder somehow, like the land had worn away anything soft and left only stone. "Mr. Holbrook." She kept her voice steady. "I'm Clara Brennan." His eyes swept over her, cataloging, assessing. She knew what he saw: too thin, too pale blood on her face, city-soft hands that had never touched a cow or split wood. "You're bleeding." The coach stopped suddenly. "I'm fine." He nodded once, then reached for her bag. His movements were efficient, practiced. A man who wasted nothing, including words. "My wagon's across the street. We should talk before heading to the ranch." Clara's stomach dropped. We should talk. Those 3 words had never preceded anything good in her entire life. Of course. The station house was barely warmer than outside. A potbelly stove sat in the corner, giving off just enough heat to keep the water from freezing. Samuel set her bag down and stood with his back to the stove, arms crossed over his chest. He still hadn't looked her in the eye. Not really. "I got your letter," he said. "The one from Cheyenne." Clara's heart stopped. The letter. She'd written it in a Cheyenne hotel room, crying so hard she could barely see the paper. Dr. Morrison in Boston had insisted she tell the truth before the marriage. "Some men consider children essential," he'd said with that clinical sympathy doctors perfected over years of delivering bad news. He deserves to know. "Mr. Holbrook, you should have told me before you left Boston." His voice cut like a blade. "Before I sold cattle to pay for your train ticket. Before my children started asking when their new mama was coming." "I know." Clara forced herself to meet his gaze. Gray eyes cold as the snow outside. "I should have told you sooner. I was afraid you'd reject you." The word hung between them. "Yes." Samuel reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a folded paper. Their marriage contract. The one she'd signed with such hope, pressing her pen so hard the ink bled through to the other side. He tore it in half. The sound was louder than it should have been, like something breaking inside her chest. "You lied to me," he said. "I didn't lie. You let me believe you could give me children. That's a lie, Mrs. Brennan. Might not have been spoken out loud, but it's a lie just the same. Clara's hands were shaking again. She clasped them together tight enough to hurt. I can still be a good wife, she whispered. I can cook clean, teach your children, help with the ranch. I don't need a hired hand. I need a wife who can give me sons. The words landed like stones, each one a bruise. Clara had heard variations of this before, from her mother-in-law after William died, from the doctors who'd examined her, from the society women who whispered behind their fans. Poor Clara. Such a shame. What's a woman worth if she can't bear children? She'd thought coming west would be different. She'd thought Samuel Holbrook's letters, kind, practical, full of quiet humor, meant he saw her as more than a breeding mare. She'd been wrong. I understand. Her voice came out flat, dead. I'll take the next stage back to Cheyenne. That won't be possible. Clara looked up. Excuse me. Roads are closing. Next stage won't come through until spring. Samuel's expression didn't change. You're stuck here, Mrs. Brennan, like it or not. 5 months. She was trapped in this frozen wilderness for 5 months with a man who looked at her like she was a problem to be solved. Clara's knees buckled. She caught herself on the edge of a chair, lowering herself down before she collapsed entirely. I see. Samuel was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke again, some of the ice had left his voice. I've got 3 children at the ranch. Emma's 12, Jack's 9, Lily just turned 6. Their mama died 2 years ago. Scarlet fever. I'm sorry. They need schooling. Emma reads well enough, but Jack struggles with his letters and Lily don't know hers at all. I can barely keep the ranch running and keep them fed. He paused, as if the next words cost him something. You said in your letters you were a teacher back in Boston. Yes, I taught at Mrs. Hartford's Academy for young ladies. Then you can teach my children. Earn your keep through winter. Separate rooms, separate arrangements. Come spring, I'll pay your passage wherever you want to go. It wasn't a proposal. It wasn't even an offer of employment. It was a transaction. Cold and clean and utterly without sentiment. But what choice did she have? I accept. Samuel nodded once. Good. We leave in an hour. Dress warm. It's a 3-hour ride to the ranch and the temperature drops fast once the sun goes down. He left without another word, and Clara sat alone in the cold room, pressing her palms to her eyes until she saw stars, refusing to let the tears fall. She would not cry. Not here. Not over this. She had survived William's death. Survived her mother-in-law's cruelty. Survived the doctors who'd treated her like a broken machine. She would survive Samuel Holbrook, too. The ranch appeared from the darkness, like something out of a fever dream. A sprawling log house with smoke curling from 2 chimneys. Outbuildings she couldn't identify in the gloom. Fences stretching into the distance. Clara couldn't feel her face anymore. The wool scarf Samuel had wordlessly handed her an hour ago had done little to block the cutting wind. Stay close, Samuel said as he helped her down from the wagon. His hands were steady on her waist, gone the moment her feet touched ground. Children don't know you're coming. Didn't want to get their hopes up. In case I wasn't suitable. Clara didn't need him to finish the sentence. The front door burst open. 3 figures tumbled out into the snow, a chaos of voices and movement. Papa, you're home. Did you bring supplies? Mrs. Peterson said you might bring peppermints. Emma pushed me in the mud and Jack wouldn't. Enough. Samuel's single word cut through the noise like a blade. The children froze on the porch steps, their eager faces suddenly wary. Inside. All of you. We need to talk. Clara got her first clear look at them in the lamplight from the doorway. Emma. 12 years old, tall for her age, all sharp elbows and serious brown eyes. Her dark hair was pulled back in a braid that had mostly come undone. She looked at Clara with immediate suspicion. Jack. 9, built like his father with the same gray eyes. Thinner than he should be, with dark circles under his eyes that spoke of sleepless nights. He coughed once, a wet sound that made Clara's chest tighten with memory. And Lily, 6 years old, clutching a rag doll with one arm missing. Her face was round and solemn, honey-colored curls tangled from sleep. She stared at Clara with eyes too old for her small body. "Children," Samuel said once they were gathered in the front room. "This is Miss Brennan. She's come from Boston to be your teacher for the winter." 3 pairs of eyes fixed on Clara. She forced herself to smile. "Hello. I'm very pleased to meet you all." Emma's eyes narrowed. "You're the lady from the letters, the one Papa was going to marry." The room went silent. Even the fire seemed to stop crackling. "Emma!" Samuel's voice carried warning. "But you're not, are you?" Emma continued, her chin lifting. "You're going to be our teacher, not our mother. That's enough." "Why?" Emma's voice rose. "Why isn't she going to be our mother? What's wrong with her?" "I said enough." The force of Samuel's words made everyone flinch, even Clara. Lily stepped forward suddenly, still clutching her broken doll. She looked up at Clara with those 2 old eyes. "Are you going to leave like Mama did?" The innocence of the question was devastating. Clara crouched down, bringing herself to the child's level. "Your Mama didn't want to leave you, sweetheart. I'm sure she loved you very much." "But she's gone." Lily's voice was matter-of-fact. "Everyone goes away. Papa says people don't mean to, but they do it anyway." Clara's throat closed up. She thought of William, pale and wasted on his deathbed, of the 3 babies she'd lost before they ever took a breath, of everyone she'd loved and lost in her 29 years. "I'll be here all winter," she said softly. "I promise I won't leave until spring." "That's not very long." "No, it's not." Jack had been silent through the exchange, but now he erupted into a coughing fit that bent him double. Wet, rattling coughs that seemed to tear themselves from his small body. Samuel was at his side in an instant. "Easy, son. Breathe through it." Clara watched with growing alarm. She knew that cough. She'd heard it in William during his last months. She'd heard it in the children's ward at Boston General, where she'd volunteered after becoming a widow. "How long has he been coughing like that?" she asked. "Since last winter." Samuel's voice was tight. "Doc Henderson says it's lung weakness. Says he'll grow out of it." But his hands were shaking as he rubbed Jack's back. And Clara saw the truth in his eyes. He was terrified. A father watching his son struggle to breathe, helpless to stop it. "I know some treatments," Clara said quietly. "My husband had weak lungs, and I volunteered at the hospital after he died. Steam inhalations, chest compresses, certain herbs." "You a doctor now?" The words came out harsh. Clara straightened. "No, I'm simply offering what I know." They stared at each other across the room. Jack's coughing had subsided to wheezes. Emma watched them both with suspicious eyes. Lily still clutched her broken doll. Samuel rubbed his face with both hands. "I apologize. That was uncalled for. It's been a long day." He showed her to a small room off the kitchen, barely enough space for a narrow bed and a washstand. But it was clean, and the blankets looked warm. "There's water in the pitcher," Samuel said. "Gets cold fast. Breakfast is at dawn. Children eat first, then chores, then lessons at 8. Mr. Holbrook." He stopped at the door. "Thank you for not sending me away, for giving me this chance." Something flickered across his face. Regret, maybe, or anger, or grief. "Don't thank me yet, Miss Brennan. Winter here is hard, makes people hard. You might be cursing my name by February." The door closed behind him. Clara sank onto the bed, still wearing her traveling clothes. Through the thin walls, she could hear Samuel moving through the house, banking fires, checking locks. The sounds of a man who'd learned to do everything alone because he had no choice. She closed her eyes and saw Lily's face, Those old eyes in that young face. Everyone goes away. What had she gotten herself into? Clara woke before dawn, her body refusing to adjust to the silence. In Boston, there had always been noise carriages on cobblestones, vendors calling out church bells marking the hours. Here the quiet was absolute, almost oppressive. She dressed quickly in the icy room, choosing her most practical dress, dark blue wool high-necked appropriate for a governess. Not a bride. That fantasy was over. When she emerged into the kitchen, Samuel was already there pouring coffee from a battered tin pot. He looked like he hadn't slept. "Children are still in bed. You want breakfast? I can prepare it, if you tell me where things are." He gestured vaguely at the cupboards. "Oats in the blue tin. Molasses on the shelf. We eat simple here." They worked in awkward silence. Samuel stood by the window with his coffee staring out at nothing. Clara figured out the rhythm of the old iron stove, finding a kind of comfort in the familiar motions of cooking. Footsteps announced the children's arrival. Lily appeared first, still in her nightgown, her hair wild around her sleep-soft face. She stopped in the doorway, staring at Clara with wide eyes. "You're still here? I told you I would be. I dreamed you left, like Mama." Clara's heart cracked. She crossed the kitchen and crouched down to Lily's level. "I'm not going anywhere, sweetheart, not until spring." "Promise. Promise." Emma and Jack arrived moments later. Emma was already dressed, her face carefully blank. Jack yawned widely, then started coughing again, short bursts that made him wince and press a hand to his chest. "Does your chest hurt?" Clara asked. Jack nodded, not meeting her eyes. "Since last night, after the coughing, it's not bad." "Let me see." She looked at Samuel, asking permission. After a moment he nodded. Clara pressed her fingers gently against Jack's chest, feeling the rattle beneath his ribs. His lungs were congested, probably had been for months. The doctors would have called it consumption in its early stages. They would have sent him to a sanatorium to die with other children who couldn't breathe. But Clara had seen children recover from this, with the right care, with constant attention, with someone who refused to give up. "I'm going to make you a steam tent," she told Jack, "and a chest compress. It won't taste good, but it'll help you breathe." "How do you know?" "My little sister had the same thing when she was your age. She's grown now, living in Philadelphia, healthy as a horse." It was only partly a lie. Her sister Rebecca had recovered. But Rebecca also hadn't spoken to Clara in 3 years, not since Clara became damaged goods, unfit for polite society. "You promise?" Jack's voice was small. "That the steam will help?" Clara hesitated. She shouldn't promise. She wasn't a doctor. She didn't know if Jack's lungs were too far gone, if the damage was already permanent. But he was looking at her with such desperate hope. A 9-year-old boy who'd lost his mother and was terrified of losing himself. "I promise to do everything I can," she said carefully. "How's that?" Jack considered. Then he nodded. "Okay." The steam treatment seemed to help. By mid-morning, Jack was breathing easier, some color returning to his pale cheeks. He'd fallen asleep in the chair by the fire, and Clara had covered him with a blanket, sitting beside him to monitor his breathing. Samuel found her there when he came in from morning chores. His eyes swept over the scene, his son sleeping peacefully, Clara with her hand on Jack's forehead, checking for fever, the pot of herb-infused water still steaming on the stove. "He's better." "He is. The congestion is loosening. He should sleep through the night without coughing." Samuel stood very still. In the morning light, Clara could see the exhaustion etched into his face, the worry lines around his eyes, the gray at his temples that hadn't been there in his photograph. "Thank you." The words seemed to cost him something. "For helping him." "You don't need to thank me. He's a child. Children deserve to breathe." A ghost of something, almost a smile, crossed Samuel's face. "Emma and Lily are in the front room. Mira made them set up the teaching supplies, books and slates and such. Then I should start their lessons." Clara rose, but Samuel's voice stopped her. "Miss Brennan." She turned. "My wife, Sarah." He paused, swallowed hard. "She made remedies like yours. Grew herbs in a garden out back. Knew which ones healed and which ones poisoned." His voice roughened. "I haven't been able to look at that garden since she died." Clara wasn't sure what to say, so she said nothing. "Jack got sick last winter right after her passing. I didn't know what to do. Didn't know her recipes, her methods. Just had to watch him suffer and pray." Samuel's hands clenched at his sides. "If you can help him, really help him, then maybe you being here isn't such a bad thing after all." It wasn't an apology. It wasn't forgiveness for her lie. But it was something. A crack in the wall he'd built around himself. "I'll do everything I can," Clara said. "I promise." Samuel nodded once. Then he was gone back out into the cold, leaving Clara alone with his sleeping son, and the ghost of a woman who'd known how to heal. Teaching the Holbrook children was like trying to tame 3 wild animals with 3 different natures. Emma was brilliant, but hostile. She read far beyond her age level, devouring the few books on the ranch's shelves like a woman starving. But she answered Clara's questions with single syllables, refused to engage in discussion, and watched Clara's every move with suspicious eyes. Jack struggled with letters they twisted and reversed themselves when he tried to read a condition Clara had seen before in bright children who simply learned differently. He needed patience and creative approaches, not the rigid drilling of traditional schooling. And Lily wanted attention. Any attention. All attention. Constant attention. She would do anything to keep Clara's eyes on her good behavior. Bad behavior. Tears. Tantrums. Sticky sweet compliance. "I can write my name," Lily announced on the second day, showing Clara a slate covered in wobbly letters. "Lily." "That's wonderful, but you've got 1 letter too many. Can you see which one?" Lily studied her slate. "The wiggly one. The second L. Your name only has 1 L in the middle." Clara guided the small hand, helping form the letters correctly. Lily. "Like the flower," Lily said. "Exactly like the flower." "Mama loved flowers. She had a garden." Lily's voice went small. "It all died when she did. Papa couldn't keep it alive." From across the room, Emma's head snapped up. "Don't talk about that." "But it's true." "I said don't." Clara intervened before the argument could escalate. "It's all right to talk about your mother. Both the happy things and the sad things. Remembering someone we love isn't wrong." "You didn't know her." Emma's voice was cold as her father's had been. "You don't get to talk about what she'd want." "You're right. I didn't know her." Clara met the girl's hostile gaze. "But I'd like to know about her. If you ever want to tell me." "Why, so you can try to replace her. No one could ever replace your mother, Emma. I'm not trying to." "Then what are you trying to do?" Clara considered the question. It deserved an honest answer. "I'm trying to survive the winter, just like you, just like your father." She paused. "And maybe if we're lucky, we can help each other do more than just survive. We can actually live." Emma stared at her for a long moment. Then she stood abruptly. "May I be excused?" Clara nodded and Emma fled the room. Through the window, Clara watched her run toward the barn braid flying behind her. "She's angry all the time now," Jack said quietly. "Since Mama died. Papa says to let her be. Sometimes people need to be angry for a while. It's part of how they heal." "Are you angry?" Lily asked. "Papa said you came here to marry him, but then you couldn't. That seems like something to be angry about." Out of the mouths of babes. "I was sad," Clara admitted. "And maybe a little angry. But your papa was honest with me. That matters more than anger. Do you still want to marry him?" Clara felt her cheeks warm. "That's not really an appropriate question, Lily." Why not? Because... because grown-up feelings are complicated. Lily considered this. Emma says feelings aren't complicated. She says people just pretend they are so they don't have to be brave. Clara stared at the 6-year-old, momentarily speechless. For a child who'd lost her mother at 4, Lily had developed a startling clarity about the world. "Your sister is very smart," Clara finally said. "I know. She reads big books." Lily picked up her slate again. "Can you teach me to write Mama?" Clara's throat tightened. "Of course, sweetheart. Of course I can." The days began to blur into a rhythm. Wake before dawn, light the fires, prepare breakfast, teach the children, tend to Jack's cough, navigate Emma's hostility, absorb Lily's desperate affection, help with whatever chores she could manage, cook supper, clean up, fall into bed exhausted. Clara had never worked so hard in her life, but something was happening, something she hadn't expected. She was starting to feel like she belonged. Jack's cough improved with the steam treatments. After a week, he was sleeping through the night without waking up gasping. After 2 weeks, his cheeks had color, and he was running around the house with an energy that made Samuel's eyes shine. "You saved him." Samuel said it late one evening when the children were in bed, and they were sitting by the fire, keeping a respectful distance. But somehow the silence between them had become comfortable rather than strained. "I just did what anyone would have done." "No." His voice was firm. "The doctor came out twice and did nothing but shake his head. You came in with your herbs and your steam tents and your patience, and you gave my son back to me." Clara didn't know what to say. "I was wrong about you," Samuel continued. "When you first came, I looked at you and saw, I don't know, a problem, a complication, another person who would leave." "Everyone leaves," Clara quoted softly. "Lily told me that's what you say." Samuel winced. "I shouldn't have taught them that. Sarah would have hated it." He paused. "She was an optimist, my Sarah. Always believed the best in people. Always thought tomorrow would be better than today." "She sounds wonderful." "She was." His voice roughened. "I wasn't good enough for her. I'm still not good enough to raise her children alone." "You're doing the best you can. That's all anyone can do." Samuel looked at her then. Really looked for the first time since she'd arrived. Not cataloging, not assessing. Just seeing. "Why did you come here, Clara?" "The real reason, not the version you put in your letters." Clara was quiet for a moment. Outside, the wind howled against the windows. Inside, the fire crackled and popped. "Because I was dying in Boston," she said finally. "Not physically, but my soul was dying. After William passed, after everything with his family. I couldn't breathe there anymore. Every street corner held a memory. Every face I saw looked at me with pity or contempt." She pulled her shawl tighter around her shoulders. "I thought if I came west, started over, maybe I could become someone new. Someone who wasn't just that poor widow who couldn't give her husband children." "Is that how they saw you?" "That's how everyone saw me, even my own mother." Clara's laugh was bitter. "She told me no respectable man would want me now. That I should become a governess or a nurse, something useful for a woman with no prospects. But you chose to become a mail-order bride instead." "I chose to bet on myself. I chose to believe that somewhere there was a man who would see me as more than a broken machine." She met his eyes. "I was wrong about that, but I don't regret coming." "Why not?" "Because of them." She gestured toward where the children slept. "Because of Jack's laughter when he can finally breathe. Because of Lily's arms around my waist when she's scared. Because of Emma's hostility." Clara smiled slightly. "Emma's courage. She's angry because she's scared. Scared that loving someone new means forgetting her mother. Scared that if she lets me in, I'll leave like everyone else." She paused. "But she's brave enough to show what she's really feeling. That takes more courage than pretending everything's fine." Samuel was quiet for a long moment. "You understand them," he said finally. "Better than I do sometimes, and I'm their father. You understand them plenty. You're just too close to see it clearly." "Is that supposed to make me feel better?" "It's supposed to make you feel human." Clara stood suddenly aware of how late it had gotten, how close they were sitting, how his eyes kept drifting to her mouth. "Good night, Mr. Holbrook." "Samuel." She paused at the doorway. "If we're going to be living in the same house for 5 months, you should probably call me Samuel." Clara felt something warm unfurl in her chest. Something dangerous. "Good night, Samuel." She fled to her room before she could do something foolish, like hope. The breakthrough with Emma came 3 weeks into December. Clara had assigned a composition exercise write about a person you admire. Jack wrote about his father, describing how Samuel could calm a spooked horse with just his voice. Lily wrote about Clara herself, in wobbly letters that made Clara's eyes sting. "Miss Clara is niece. She fixed my dole. I admire her." But Emma sat with her slate-blank knuckles white around her pencil. "Can't think of anyone?" "I can think of someone." Emma's voice was hard. "I just don't want to write about her." "Your mother." Emma's head snapped up. "Don't." "Don't what?" "Don't say her name like you knew her. You didn't. You're just a stranger Papa brought home because he couldn't find anyone else." The words hurt. Clara let them hurt. "You're right. I am a stranger, and I didn't know your mother." She pulled a chair close, sitting so they were eye to eye. "But I'd like to know about her. Through you." "Why?" The word was almost aggressive. "So you can pretend to care. So you can make Papa forget about her." "Is that what you're afraid of? That your father will forget her?" Emma's lip trembled. For a moment, she looked exactly like what she was, a 12-year-old girl who'd lost her mother and was terrified of losing anyone else. "I'm already forgetting," Emma whispered. "Every day I try to remember her voice, and it's a little bit quieter. I try to remember her face, and the edges get blurry." Tears spilled down her cheeks. "What if I forget her completely? What if she just disappears?" Clara's heart shattered. "Oh, sweetheart." She reached out slowly, giving Emma time to pull away. Emma didn't pull away. She collapsed into Clara's arms, sobbing in great gasping breaths that shook her whole body. "I miss her so much. I miss her so much. And Papa won't talk about her. And Jack gets sick when he cries, and Lily doesn't even remember, and I'm all alone with remembering. And it hurts. It hurts every single day." "I know." Clara held her tighter. "I know it does." They stayed like that for a long time, Emma crying while Clara murmured wordless comfort. Jack and Lily watched from across the room, uncertain what to do. Finally, Emma's sobs quieted. She pulled back, wiping her face with her sleeve. "I got your dress wet." "I don't care about the dress." Emma looked at her. Really looked for the first time since Clara had arrived. "You lost someone too, didn't you? Someone you loved." Clara nodded. "My husband, William, 3 years ago." "Do you still miss him?" "Every day. But the missing changes. It starts as this giant boulder sitting on your chest crushing you, and slowly over time it shrinks. It doesn't disappear. It just becomes something you can carry." Emma considered this. "Did you have children with your husband?" Clara's throat closed. 3 babies. 3 small graves in Boston. 3 pieces of her heart she'd never get back. "No," she whispered. "I couldn't have children. That's why your father rejected me." Emma's eyes widened. "He rejected you because you're barren." "Yes." "That's stupid." The word burst out of Emma with surprising vehemence. "That's the stupidest reason I ever heard. Mama was barren after Lily was born. The doctor said she couldn't have no more babies. And Papa didn't stop loving her. He loved her even more." Clara felt the world tilt slightly. He did. Course he did. He said, Emma's voice softened. He said she'd already given him 3 perfect children, and he didn't need nothing else. He said she was the best thing that ever happened to him, and he'd rather have her and 3 kids than any other woman, and a dozen. Something cracked open in Clara's chest. Something that felt like hope, tender and terrifying. Can I still write about her? Emma asked quietly. For the assignment. I would love that. The page Emma produced was the most beautiful thing Clara had ever read. 3 pages, instead of 1, in careful script describing Sarah Holbrook with such vivid detail that Clara felt she knew the woman, her laugh, her kindness, her garden, full of healing herbs, the way she sang hymns while she worked. By the time Clara finished reading, tears were streaming down her face. This is extraordinary, Emma. Her voice was thick. Your mother would be so proud of you. For the first time since Clara had arrived, Emma smiled. A real smile, small but genuine. Thank you, Miss Clara. Thank you for sharing her with me. That night, Clara found Samuel on the front porch despite the cold. She was learning this was his thinking place, his grieving place. She wrote about her mother today, for an assignment. Samuel was quiet for a long moment. She doesn't talk about Sarah, not to me. She's afraid it hurts you. It does, but not the way she thinks. He turned to look at Clara, and in the moonlight, his face was all shadows and sharp edges. Sarah would have liked you. She was always saying we needed someone to shake things up around here. Clara's pulse stuttered. Was she? She was. Samuel's voice dropped. And I think I was wrong. About what I said when you arrived. About needing more children. Samuel. I have 3 children who need a mother. 3 children who are starting to love you. He paused. And I'm starting to... I don't know what I'm starting, but it's something. Something I didn't expect. Clara's heart was pounding so hard she could barely hear him over the blood rushing in her ears. I'm here until spring, she said softly. That's what we agreed. And after spring... Before she could answer, a scream tore through the night. Lily's scream. High and terrified. They ran. Lily was sitting up in bed sobbing hysterically, reaching for something that wasn't there. Mama! Mama, don't go! Mama, please! Clara reached her first, gathering the small body into her arms. Shh, sweetheart. It's okay. It's okay, you're safe. Mama left. Lily sobbed. She was here and then she left, and she didn't say goodbye, and she didn't take me with her. It was a dream, baby. Just a bad dream. It wasn't... Lily pulled back, her face streaked with tears. I saw her. She was standing right there, and she was so pretty, and she said she had to go, and I asked her to stay, and she said she couldn't, and then she was gone. Clara held her tighter, rocking back and forth, murmuring comfort, while Lily's sobs slowly subsided. Samuel stood in the doorway, his face devastated. Emma and Jack had appeared behind him, both of them pale and scared. She has these dreams sometimes, Emma said quietly. Since Mama died, she never remembers them in the morning. But tonight, Clara suspected Lily would remember. She stayed in Lily's bed that night, the little girl curled against her like a kitten. Samuel checked on them twice, his face unreadable in the darkness. Around midnight, Lily stirred. Miss Clara. Yes, sweetheart. I know you're not my real mama. The little voice was sleepy but clear. But could you stay anyway? Even after spring, could you be our mama who stays? Clara's eyes burned. I don't know, baby. That's not just up to me. Papa wants you to stay. I can tell. How can you tell? Because he smiles when he looks at you. He hasn't smiled since Mama died. Lily yawned. I think Mama sent you, from heaven, because she knew we needed you. Clara couldn't speak, couldn't breathe. Lily fell back asleep. Her small hand curled around Clara's fingers. And Clara lay awake until dawn thinking about second chances, about broken families that might just fit together, about the terrifying possibility that she had finally found where she belonged. But belonging was dangerous. Belonging meant you had something to lose. And there were men in Silver Creek who wanted the Holbrook Ranch men who would do anything to get it. Clara didn't know it yet, but the real fight was just beginning. The next morning, Clara woke with Lily still pressed against her side. The child's small fingers tangled in Clara's nightgown. For a moment she forgot where she was. Forgot the rejection, the frozen wilderness, the arrangement that was supposed to be temporary. Then Lily stirred, and everything came flooding back. "You stayed," Lily whispered, her voice thick with sleep. "I told you I would. People say that. They don't always mean it." Clara smoothed the tangled curls back from Lily's face. "I mean it, sweetheart. I'm not going anywhere." She carried those words with her through the morning chores, turning them over in her mind like stones. "I'm not going anywhere." But that wasn't true, was it? Come spring, she'd be on a stage back to Cheyenne, back to a life that had nothing left for her. Unless Samuel meant what he'd said on the porch last night. Unless the something he was starting to feel was the same something that had taken root in her own chest, growing stronger every day, despite her best efforts to stop it. She was measuring oats into the pot when Samuel came in from the barn, stamping snow from his boots. He stopped when he saw her, and something passed between them. An acknowledgement of what had almost been said last night before Lily's nightmare interrupted. "How is she?" "Sleeping peacefully now. I stayed with her." "I know. I checked." Samuel moved to the stove, pouring himself coffee. 3 times. Clara's cheeks warmed. "You didn't have to do that." "Couldn't sleep anyway." He was quiet for a moment, staring into his cup. "She hasn't had a nightmare that bad in months. Thought we were past it. Grief doesn't work like that. It comes in waves. Sometimes the waves are small, and sometimes they knock you flat." Samuel looked at her. "Speaking from experience. 3 years of it." The silence stretched between them, but it wasn't uncomfortable. It was the silence of 2 people who understood each other's pain without needing to explain it. "Clara." Samuel's voice dropped. "About what I said last night." The front door crashed open. Emma stood in the doorway, her face flushed from running, her breath coming in ragged gasps. "Papa, there's men outside, 3 of them. They're wearing guns." Samuel's expression transformed. The gentle, uncertain man from a moment ago vanished, replaced by someone harder. Someone dangerous. "Stay inside, all of you." He grabbed his rifle from above the door and was gone before Clara could speak. She ran to the window, Emma pressing close beside her. 3 riders sat on horseback near the barn, their horses pawing impatiently at the snow. Even from this distance, Clara could see they were well armed. Well dressed, too. These weren't drifters or outlaws. These were men with money. The one in front swung down from his horse as Samuel approached. He was tall, with silver hair beneath his hat, and the confident posture of a man used to getting what he wanted. "Who is that?" Clara asked. Emma's voice was tight. "Marcus Thornton. He owns half the valley." "What does he want?" "Our ranch. He's been trying to buy it since Mama died." Through the window, Clara watched the conversation unfold. She couldn't hear the words, but she could read the body language. Samuel stood rigid, one hand on his rifle. Thornton gestured expansively, smiling, as if they were discussing the weather rather than whatever had brought 3 armed men to the ranch before breakfast. Then Thornton said something that made Samuel's shoulders go tight. His grip on the rifle shifted. "He's going to do something stupid," Emma breathed. "Papa, don't." Clara was moving before she could think. Out the door, across the porch, into the biting wind. She heard Emma call after her, but she didn't stop. "Mr. Holbrook." She kept her voice calm, steady. The voice she'd used with unruly students at Mrs. Hartford's academy. Breakfast is getting cold. All four men turned to look at her. Samuel's expression was thunderous. Thornton's was interested. Well, well. Thornton removed his hat, revealing more silver hair slicked back from a face that might have been handsome once. Samuel, you didn't mention you had company. She's the children's teacher. Samuel's voice was flat. Nothing more. The children's teacher. Thornton's smile widened. All the way out here in the middle of winter. His eyes swept over Clara, and she felt herself being assessed, catalogued. You must be the mail-order bride I heard about. The one from Boston. Clara kept her face a neutral. I don't believe we've been introduced. Marcus Thornton. I own the Thornton Cattle Company. He said it like she should be impressed. And you are Clara Brennan. Brennan. Thornton's eyebrows rose. Not Holbrook. The lady's name is her own business. Samuel stepped forward, putting himself between Clara and Thornton. And you still haven't answered my question. What are you doing on my land? Just a friendly visit, Samuel. Wanted to check on you and the children. Make sure you're surviving the winter. We're surviving fine. Are you? Thornton's gaze drifted to the barn, the house, the fences. Ranch looks like it's struggling. Roof needs patching. Fence posts are rotting. That barn's going to collapse under a heavy snow. Nothing I can't handle. Of course not. You're Samuel Holbrook. You can handle anything. Thornton's voice dripped with false admiration. But handling and thriving are different things. A man alone with 3 children trying to work a ranch this size. He shook his head. It's too much, even for you. I'm not alone. No. Thornton glanced at Clara. The temporary teacher. She'll be gone come spring. Then what? The question hung in the air. Clara saw Samuel's jaw tighten, saw his knuckles go white around the rifle. Get off my property, Marcus. Just think about my offer. That's all I'm asking. Thornton mounted his horse with the ease of a man who'd spent his life in the saddle. I'm offering a fair price. More than fair. You take it, you can start over somewhere else. Somewhere easier. Give those children a real life instead of watching them freeze and starve out here. My children are fine. Are they? Thornton's eyes found Clara again. That boy of yours was coughing up blood last winter. Heard it from the doctor. Weak lungs, he said. Getting worse every year. He smiled, and there was nothing friendly in it. Cold like this will kill him eventually. You know that. Samuel moved so fast Clara barely saw it. One moment he was standing still. The next he had Thornton by the coat, yanking him half out of the saddle. You ever talk about my son again, I'll put a bullet between your eyes. The 2 men behind Thornton went for their guns. Clara's heart stopped. Samuel. She kept her voice calm, even though her hands were shaking. Let him go. Listen to the lady. Thornton wasn't smiling anymore. You don't want to start something you can't finish. For a terrible moment, Clara thought Samuel was going to do it anyway, going to throw the first punch and give Thornton's men an excuse to shoot. Then Samuel released him, stepped back. His face was carved from stone. Get off my land. Don't come back. Thornton straightened his coat, his expression ugly. You'll regret this, Holbrook. I offered you a way out. Remember that when everything falls apart. He wheeled his horse and rode away, his men following. Clara didn't breathe until they disappeared over the ridge. What were you thinking? Samuel rounded on her, his voice rough with fury. Coming out here putting yourself in the middle of that. I was thinking you were about to get yourself killed. I can handle Marcus Thornton. You were about to grab a man in front of his armed guards. That's not handling. That's suicide. Samuel's jaw worked. He threatened my son. I know. Clara's own anger was rising now. And if you'd gotten shot defending Jack's honor, how exactly would that have helped him? He'd have a dead father instead of just a sick one. The words landed like a slap. Samuel went very still. I'm sorry, Clara said immediately. That was cruel. I didn't mean... You're right. His voice was quiet, defeated. "You're right. I let him get under my skin. I almost—" He rubbed his face with both hands. "God, what's wrong with me?" "Nothing's wrong with you. You're a father protecting his children. That's not weakness. It's love." Samuel looked at her, then really looked, and something in his expression made Clara's breath catch. "You called me Samuel when you were trying to stop me. You called me by my name." Clara felt her cheeks flush. I wasn't thinking. I liked it." He stepped closer, close enough that she could see the flecks of darker gray in his eyes, the slight tremble in his hands. "I like a lot of things about you, Clara Brennan." "Samuel. Papa." They sprang apart. Jack stood in the doorway, his face pale, his eyes wide. Who were those men? Why were they yelling? Samuel crossed to his son immediately, crouching down to his level. "It's nothing, buddy. Just some business talk." "Were they going to hurt you?" "No, nobody's going to hurt anybody." Jack's eyes found Clara. "Miss Clara came outside. I saw her through the window. Was she scared?" Clara moved to join them, kneeling on the cold porch. "I was worried about your papa. That's why I went out, to make sure everyone stayed calm." "She was very brave," Samuel added, and the warmth in his voice made Clara's heart skip. Jack considered this. "Mama used to do that too. Go outside when men came. Papa said she could talk a wolf out of biting." Samuel's expression softened with grief and memory. "She could. Your mama had a gift for that. Maybe Miss Clara has the same gift." Clara and Samuel's eyes met over Jack's head. Something passed between them. An acknowledgement. A promise. "Maybe she does," Samuel said quietly. But the peace of the moment didn't last. Over the next week, things started happening. Small things at first. A fence post cut through instead of rotted. Feed bags slashed open oats scattered across the snow. Tracks around the barn that didn't belong to any of them. "It's Thornton," Samuel said grimly, examining the damaged fence. "He's trying to drive us out." "Can you prove it?" "Not without catching his men in the act, and they're too smart for that." Clara watched him work to repair the damage, his movements jerky with frustration. "What about the sheriff?" "Sheriff Peters." Samuel laughed bitterly. "He owes Thornton money. Half the town owes Thornton money. Nobody's going to help us." "Then we help ourselves." Samuel paused, looking up at her. "What do you mean?" "I mean we don't let him win. We repair what he breaks. We guard what we can. We show him that we're not going anywhere." "That's a war of attrition, Clara, and he's got more resources than we do." "Then we get creative." That night, after the children were in bed, Clara sat down with a piece of paper and began to write. Not a letter this time, but a list. Everything she knew about Marcus Thornton. Everything she'd overheard in town during their one trip for supplies. Everything Samuel had told her about the history between the two families. "What are you doing?" Samuel asked, settling into the chair across from her. "Looking for weaknesses. Everyone has them." "Thornton's weakness is pride. He can't stand being challenged." "That's not a weakness we can exploit. Not directly." Clara tapped her pen against her lips. "What else does he have? Family enemies. Anyone who might want to see him taken down a notch." Samuel was quiet for a moment. "He had a son, Thomas, good kid. Used to come around sometimes, help with the horses." "What happened to him?" "Died 5 years ago. Riding accident." Samuel's voice was careful. "Here, at our ranch." Clara looked up sharply. "Here. He was visiting. Wanted to see our new foal. His horse spooked at something, threw him. He hit his head on a rock." Samuel's jaw tightened. "Thornton blamed me. Said I should have been watching him. Said if Thomas had been on Thornton land, he'd still be alive. Was it your fault?" "No, it was an accident. A terrible accident." Samuel's hands clenched on his knees. "But Thornton doesn't see it that way. He's been trying to destroy me ever since. Buying up debt, pressuring suppliers, turning people against us. Sarah's death just gave him the opening he needed." Clara sat back, her mind racing. This changed everything. Thornton wasn't just a greedy rancher trying to expand his holdings. This was personal. This was revenge. "He's not going to stop," she said slowly. "Is he? No matter what we do, he's not going to stop until he has this ranch. Or until one of us is dead." The words hung in the air between them, heavy and terrible. "Then we have to stop him first." Samuel shook his head. "Clara, you don't understand how things work out here. Men like Thornton." "I understand perfectly." Clara's voice was sharp. "I understand that bullies only have power because people let them. I understand that if we keep reacting to his attacks, we'll lose. We need to go on the offensive. And do what we can't match his money or his men." "No. But we have something he doesn't." Clara leaned forward. "We have truth. We have community. We have people who know what kind of man he really is. People who are too scared to stand against him. People who haven't been given a reason to be brave yet." Clara's eyes were bright with determination. "What if we gave them one?" Samuel studied her for a long moment. This woman who'd arrived broken and rejected, who'd somehow become the heart of his family in just a few weeks. Who looked at impossible odds and saw not defeat but opportunity. "You're not like anyone I've ever met," he said finally. "Is that a good thing or a bad thing?" "I'm still figuring that out." But he was smiling. Actually, smiling. And Clara felt something warm bloom in her chest, something that felt dangerously like hope. The next morning, Emma burst into the kitchen while Clara was preparing breakfast. "Papa's hurt." Clara dropped the spoon and ran. She found Samuel in the barn clutching his arm, blood seeping between his fingers. One of the horses was loose, dancing nervously in its stall. "What happened?" "Saddle strap broke." Samuel's voice was tight with pain. "Horse bolted. Got caught on the doesn't matter. It's just a cut." But it wasn't just a cut. Clara could see that from the amount of blood. She pushed his hands away and nearly gasped. The wound was deep, running from his elbow to his wrist, and it was bleeding freely. "Inside. Now." She half dragged him to the kitchen, ignoring his protests that he was fine, that it looked worse than it was. She set him in a chair and grabbed clean cloths, pressing them hard against the wound. "Hold that. Don't move." Emma hovered in the doorway, her face white. "Is Papa going to be okay?" "He's going to be fine. I need hot water and the sewing kit from my room. Can you get those?" Emma nodded and fled. Jack appeared next, Lily close behind. They took one look at their father's bloody arm and froze. "Jack." Clara kept her voice calm, even as her heart raced. "I need you to take Lily to the front room. Read her a story. Keep her there until I come get you." "But..." "Now, Jack, please." Something in her voice made him obey. He took Lily's hand and led her away, shooting worried glances over his shoulder. "Kids shouldn't see this," Samuel muttered. "No, they shouldn't. Which is why you're going to stay calm and let me fix you up without any fuss." Emma returned with the supplies, and Clara set to work. The wound needed stitches. She'd done this before in the hospital wards after William died, but never on someone she stopped that thought before it could finish. "This is going to hurt," she warned. "Can't hurt worse than it already does." She cleaned the wound with boiled water, then threaded the needle with steady hands. Samuel hissed when she made the first stitch, but didn't pull away. "Talk to me," he said through gritted teeth. "Distract me." "What do you want me to talk about?" "Anything. Tell me about Boston. Tell me about your husband. Tell me why a woman like you ended up on a stage to Wyoming." Clara's hands moved automatically, stitching and pulling, stitching and pulling. "A woman like me. Smart, strong, beautiful." He winced as she tied off a stitch. "You could have had anyone. Why answer an advertisement for a mail-order bride?" "Because no one wanted me." The words came out before she could stop them. "I was damaged goods. A widow who couldn't bear children. In Boston society, that's worse than being dead." "That's the stupidest thing I've ever heard." "Maybe, but it's how things are. How things were." Clara made another stitch, focusing on the rhythm of the work. My mother-in-law threw me out after William died. Said I'd killed him by not giving him an heir. Said the stress of my barrenness had weakened his constitution. Was that true? He died of consumption. It had nothing to do with children. Clara's voice was bitter. But she needed someone to blame. And I was convenient. So you came west. I came west. I thought if I could just start over somewhere no one knew me. Somewhere people were judged by what they could do, instead of what they couldn't. She trailed off. It sounds naive now. It sounds brave. Clara looked up. Samuel was watching her. His face pale from blood loss, but his eyes clear. Warm. You came all this way on hope, he said quietly. That takes courage. Or desperation. Maybe they're the same thing. She finished the last stitch and tied it off, then wrapped his arm in clean bandages. Her hands lingered on his skin a moment longer than necessary. Thank you, Samuel said. It's just stitches. I'm not talking about the stitches. Their eyes met. Held. Clara felt the world narrow down to this moment, this man, this impossible situation that somehow felt more right than anything in her life before. Papa? Emma's voice from the doorway. Are you okay? The moment broke. Samuel pulled back, and Clara busied herself with cleaning up the bloody cloths. I'm fine, Bug. Miss Clara fixed me up. Emma looked between them, her eyes narrowed with something that might have been suspicion, or might have been hope. The saddle strap was cut. Clara went cold. What? I looked, after. The strap didn't break on its own. Someone cut it partway through, so it would snap under Papa's weight. Samuel's expression darkened. Show me. He was out of the chair before Clara could stop him, striding toward the barn with Emma at his heels. Clara followed, dread pooling in her stomach. The saddle lay where it had fallen. Samuel picked up the strap, examined it, and his face went hard as granite. She's right. Someone sabotaged this. Thornton. Who else? Samuel threw the strap down. He's not just trying to drive us out anymore. He's trying to kill me. Clara's blood ran cold. The children! They're not safe here. Samuel's voice was raw. None of us are. Maybe Thornton was right. Maybe I should take the money, start over somewhere else. No. Clara grabbed his good arm, forcing him to look at her. That's exactly what he wants. If you run, he wins. And men like him don't stop at one victory. He'll follow you. He'll find you. He'll take everything. What choice do I have? I can't protect them. I can't even protect myself. Yes, you can. We can. Together. Clara's grip tightened. You're not alone anymore, Samuel. You have me. You have Emma and Jack and Lily. We're a family whether you intended it that way or not. And families don't run. They stand. Samuel stared at her. His eyes were bright with something that might have been tears, might have been fear, might have been love. You said temporary, he whispered. You said come spring you'd leave. I lied. She didn't know which of them moved first. But suddenly, his good arm was around her waist, pulling her close, and his mouth was on hers, and nothing else existed except this moment, this man, this impossible, terrifying, wonderful feeling of finally being home. When they broke apart, both breathing hard, Clara saw Emma standing in the barn doorway, watching them, a small smile on her face. I knew it, Emma said. I knew you'd stay. Clara laughed, a sound caught between joy and tears. You're too smart for your own good. Mama always said that too. Emma walked forward, and for the first time she wrapped her arms around Clara's waist. I'm glad you're staying, Miss Clara. I'm glad you're going to be our mama. Clara held her tight, meeting Samuel's eyes over Emma's head. So am I, sweetheart. So am I. But even as she said it, she knew the fight wasn't over. Thornton was still out there, still plotting. And now that he'd tried to kill Samuel once, he wouldn't stop until he succeeded. Or until someone stopped him first. That night, after the children were asleep, and Samuel was resting with his injured arm, Clara sat by the fire and made a decision. She wasn't going to wait for Thornton's next attack. She wasn't going to play defense anymore. She was going to find a way to beat him. And if that meant putting herself in danger, if that meant risking everything she'd just found, then so be it. Because some things were worth fighting for. Some things were worth dying for. And this family, this broken, beautiful, impossible family that had somehow become her own, was worth all of that and more. Clara waited 3 days before putting her plan into motion. 3 days of watching Samuel struggle with his injured arm, of seeing the fear in the children's eyes every time a horse passed on the distant road, of lying awake at night, listening for sounds that didn't belong. 3 days of being afraid. She was done being afraid. "I need to go to town," she announced at breakfast. Samuel looked up from his coffee. "What for?" "Supplies. We're running low on flour, and I need more herbs for Jack's treatments." "I can go when my arm heals." "Your arm won't heal properly for weeks, and we need those supplies now." Clara kept her voice light, casual. "Besides, I haven't been to town since I arrived. I'd like to see it properly." Samuel's eyes narrowed. He wasn't stupid. He knew something was off. "I'll come with you." "With that arm, you can barely hold the reins." "Then we'll wait." "Samuel." Clara set down her spoon and met his gaze directly. "I'm not a prisoner here. I'm not going to hide in this house forever because Marcus Thornton might be watching. He tried to kill me. He tried to scare you into selling. There's a difference." Clara reached across the table and covered his hand with hers. "Let me do this. Let me help." Samuel was quiet for a long moment. She could see the war playing out behind his eyes. Pride versus practicality. Fear versus trust. "Take the shotgun," he said finally, "and be back before dark." Clara smiled. "I will." But she had no intention of simply buying flour and herbs. The ride to Silver Creek took 2 hours. Clara used the time to rehearse what she would say, how she would say it. This was a gamble. If it didn't work, she might make things worse. But if it did work... Silver Creek was larger than she'd expected. A main street lined with wooden buildings, a church with a white steeple, a general store, a saloon, a hotel. People moved along the boardwalks going about their business, barely glancing at the woman on horseback. Clara tied her horse outside the general store and went inside. The store was warm and smelled of tobacco and leather. An older woman stood behind the counter, her gray hair pulled back in a severe bun, her eyes sharp and assessing. "Help you." "I'm Clara Brennan, from the Holbrook Ranch." The woman's expression shifted, became guarded. "I know who you are. The mail-order bride." "The teacher," Clara corrected. "I teach the Holbrook children." "Same thing, ain't it?" Clara didn't take the bait. "I need flour, sugar, and whatever medicinal herbs you have. The boy has weak lungs." The woman began gathering supplies, her movements stiff. "Heard about that. Heard a lot of things about that ranch." "I'm sure you have." "Heard Marcus Thornton's been causing trouble out there." Clara's heart skipped. "You heard that?" "Small town, people talk." The woman set a bag of flour on the counter. "Not that anyone does anything about it. Man owns half the valley, owns the sheriff too near enough." "Is that so?" The woman's eyes met Clara's. "You're not from around here. You don't know how things work." "Then tell me." The woman was quiet for a moment. Then she leaned forward, lowering her voice. "Thornton's son died at the Holbrook place 5 years ago. Before that, Marcus Thornton was hard but fair. After..." She shook her head. "Something broke in him. He blames Samuel, blames the whole family. He won't stop until he has that ranch, even if he has to destroy everyone on it. And no one will stand against him. Stand against him with what he controls: the bank, the feed store. Half the ranchers in this valley owe him money." The woman's voice was bitter. You stand against Marcus Thornton, you lose everything. Clara absorbed this. It was worse than she'd thought. But it also gave her an opening. What if there was a way to stand against him without losing everything? The woman's eyes narrowed. What do you mean? I mean safety in numbers. I mean if enough people stood together, Thornton couldn't destroy all of them. Clara leaned closer. I mean, what if someone organized the people he's been bullying into actually fighting back? You. The woman laughed, but there was no humor in it. You're a stranger. A city woman. Why would anyone follow you? They wouldn't follow me. They'd follow Samuel Holbrook, if he led them. Samuel's too proud to ask for help. Then I'll ask for him. The woman studied her for a long moment. Then something shifted in her expression. Something that might have been respect. You've got guts, I'll give you that. She finished gathering Clara's supplies. Talk to Pete Martinez. He runs the livery stable. Thornton's been squeezing him for months. If anyone's ready to fight, it's Pete. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. This could go very wrong very fast. The woman took Clara's money. But if it goes right, well, it's been a long time since anyone gave us hope. Clara gathered her supplies and headed for the livery stable. Pete Martinez was a weathered man in his 60s, with a face like cracked leather and eyes that had seen too much. He listened to Clara's pitch in silence, his expression unreadable. You want me to stand against Thornton? He said when she finished. Me and who else? Everyone he's been hurting. Everyone who's tired of being afraid. That's a lot of people. Exactly. Pete shook his head. You don't understand, ma'am. Thornton's got power. Real power. Money and men and connections. What do we have? Each other. Numbers. The truth. Clara stepped closer. Mr. Martinez, I've seen men like Thornton before. They seem invincible, but they're not. Their power comes from fear, from people believing they can't be beaten. But the moment that belief cracks, the moment people see that resistance is possible, she let the implication hang. Pretty words. But words don't stop bullets. No, but community does. Solidarity does. Clara's voice hardened. He tried to kill Samuel. Cut a saddle strap so his horse would throw him. That's not business anymore. That's attempted murder. Pete's eyes widened. He did what? You heard me. And if he's willing to do that to Samuel, how long before he does it to someone else? How long before it's you or your family or someone you care about? Pete was quiet for a long moment. Then he sighed. There's a meeting tonight. Some of the ranchers. We've been talking about what to do, but nobody's got a plan. He met her eyes. You want to make your case be at the church at sundown. I'll make sure they listen. Clara's heart leaped. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. This might get us all killed. She rode back to the ranch with her heart pounding and her mind racing. She'd taken the first step. Now she had to convince Samuel to take the next one. He was waiting on the porch when she arrived, his face dark with worry. You were gone too long. I had business to attend to. What business? Clara dismounted and faced him squarely. I talked to some people in town. About Thornton. About fighting back. Samuel's expression went cold. You did what? I found allies, Samuel. People who are as tired of Thornton as you are. People who are willing to stand together. You had no right. I had every right. He tried to kill you. He's terrorizing your children, and you're just going to wait for him to try again. I'm going to handle it my way. Your way is to suffer in silence until he destroys you. Clara's voice rose. That's not strength, Samuel. That's pride. And pride will get you killed. They stared at each other, both breathing hard. The air between them crackled with tension. There's a meeting tonight, Clara said more quietly. At the church. Other ranchers who've been hurt by Thornton. They want to hear from you. I'm not going to beg for help. It's not begging. It's leading. Clara stepped closer, putting her hand on his chest. These people need someone to show them it's possible to fight back. You could be that person. You could give them hope. I can barely keep my own family safe. How am I supposed to save the whole valley? You're not alone anymore. Clara's voice was fierce. When are you going to understand that you have me? You have the children. You have neighbors who want to help but are too scared to move first. Be the first. Show them the way. Samuel's jaw worked. She could see him fighting himself, fighting his pride and his fear and his bone-deep belief that he had to handle everything alone. If this goes wrong, he said finally, if Thornton retaliates, then we'll face it together, all of us. The children need to see their father stand up for what's right. They need to learn that bullies only win when good people do nothing. Samuel closed his eyes. When he opened them again, something had changed. The hardness was still there, but beneath it was something else, something that looked like hope. All right, he said quietly. I'll go to the meeting. Clara felt tears prick her eyes. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. This might be the worst decision I've ever made. But he was smiling, just a little, and Clara knew in that moment that whatever came next, they would face it together. The church was packed. Clara hadn't expected so many people, at least 20 ranchers and their wives crowded into the small wooden building with its plain pews and simple altar. They'd come from all over the valley, bundled against the cold, their faces a mixture of hope and fear. Pete Martinez stood at the front waiting. When Samuel walked in, a murmur went through the crowd. Holbrook came. Didn't think he'd show. Maybe there's hope after all. Samuel made his way to the front, Clara at his side. He looked out at the assembled faces, these neighbors he'd known for years, but rarely spoken to, and Clara saw him straighten his shoulders. You all know why we're here. He began, his voice rough. Marcus Thornton has been squeezing this valley for years, taking what he wants, destroying anyone who gets in his way. Murmurs of agreement. I've been one of those people. He's been trying to drive me off my land ever since his son died, and I've been fighting him alone because I was too proud to ask for help. He paused, and Clara saw him glance at her, drawing strength. That was a mistake. I should have come to you years ago. Should have realized that we're stronger together than we are apart. His voice grew firmer. Thornton's power comes from our fear, from our isolation, from the belief that we can't beat him, but we can, if we stand together. How? Someone called out. He's got money, men, the sheriff in his pocket. We've got something better. We've got numbers. We've got the truth. And we've got the law if we take our case to the territorial office instead of relying on Sheriff Peters. Another murmur, this one surprised. There's a territorial judge coming through Cheyenne next month, Samuel continued. A man named Harrison who's got a reputation for fairness. If we can document what Thornton's been doing, the sabotage, the intimidation, the attempted murder, we can take it to him. Get a real investigation. One Thornton can't buy his way out of. He'll retaliate, Pete Martinez said. The moment he finds out what we're doing. Then we protect each other, watch each other's properties, pool our resources, make it clear that attacking one of us means attacking all of us. And if that's not enough, a woman's voice called out. Clara recognized her, the shopkeeper who'd given her the tip about Pete. Samuel's jaw tightened. Then we defend ourselves, however we have to. The room went quiet. Everyone understood what he wasn't saying. I'm not asking you to start a war, Samuel said more softly. I'm asking you to stand up, to stop being afraid, to show Thornton that we're not going to be bullied anymore. He looked around the room, meeting eyes one after another. Who's with me? For a terrible moment, no one moved. Clara's heart sank. Then Pete Martinez stepped forward. I'm with you. The shopkeeper followed. Me too. One by one, others joined them. 10 people, 15, 20, until nearly everyone in the church had stepped forward, their faces determined. Samuel's expression was something Clara had never seen before. Shock, gratitude, and beneath it all, a fierce burning hope. "Thank you," he said, his voice thick. "All of you." "Don't thank us yet," Pete said, echoing his earlier words to Clara. "This is just the beginning." They spent the next 2 hours making plans. Who would watch whose property? Who would document what evidence? Who would make the trip to Cheyenne to meet with Judge Harrison? Clara volunteered for Cheyenne before Samuel could stop her. "Absolutely not," he said as they rode home through the darkness. "It's too dangerous." "It's necessary. You can't go not with your arm still healing. And I'm the one who started this. I should be the one to finish it." "Clara, I traveled alone from Boston to Wyoming. I can handle a trip to Cheyenne." "That was different. Thornton wasn't trying to stop you then." "He won't know I've gone. We'll keep it quiet." Clara reached over and took his hand. "Trust me, Samuel. Please." He was quiet for a long moment. The horse's hooves crunched through the snow, and somewhere in the distance, a wolf howled. "I can't lose you," he said finally, his voice barely above a whisper. "Not now. Not after everything." "You won't lose me, I promise." "People break promises." "I don't." Clara squeezed his hand. "I'm coming back to you, Samuel Holbrook. To you and Emma and Jack and Lily. Nothing in this world is going to stop me." He looked at her in the moonlight, and she saw tears glinting in his eyes. "I love you," he said. "I don't know when it happened or how, but I love you. And I'm terrified of what that means." Clara's heart swelled until she thought it might burst. "I love you too. I've loved you since you gave me that scarf on the ride from town, since you let me stay when you had every reason to send me away. I couldn't send you away. Even then, some part of me knew you belonged here. Then trust that I'll come back. Trust that this family is worth fighting for." Samuel pulled his horse to a stop and leaned over, kissing her softly in the cold night air. It was a kiss full of fear and hope, and desperate, aching love. "Come back to me," he whispered against her lips. "Always." She left for Cheyenne 3 days later, carrying documents and testimonies from a dozen ranchers' evidence of Thornton's crimes that would surely be enough to convince Judge Harrison to investigate. The children cried when she said goodbye. Even Emma, who'd become her fiercest defender in the week since their breakthrough. "You're coming back, right?" Emma demanded, her voice fierce, even as tears streaked her face. "You promised Lily. You can't break a promise to Lily." "I'm coming back." Clara hugged her tight. "I promise all of you. 2 weeks, maybe less, and I'll be home." "This is home," Lily corrected, clutching her doll. You said you weren't going anywhere." "And I meant it. Home is here. Home is you." Clara knelt down to Lily's level. "But sometimes, to protect our home, we have to go away for a little while. Do you understand?" Lily nodded solemnly. "Like when Papa goes to check the far pastures." "Exactly like that." Jack hung back, his face pale but determined. "I'll take care of everyone while you're gone. I'll do my breathing treatments without being reminded. I'll help Papa with chores." Clara pulled him into a hug. "I know you will. You're the bravest boy I know." Samuel walked her to where the stage would pass a mile from the ranch. They stood together in the pre-dawn darkness, neither wanting to say goodbye. "I've been thinking," Samuel said, "about what happens when you come back." "What about it?" "I want to marry you, properly this time. Not a business arrangement. Not a desperate deal." He took her hands in his. "I want to stand in front of God and everyone and promise to love you for the rest of my life. If you'll have me." Clara felt tears spill down her cheeks. "Yes, yes, I'll have you. I'll have all of you." The stage appeared on the horizon, and Clara's heart clenched. It was time. 2 weeks, she said. "I'll be back in 2 weeks. I'll be counting every minute. One last kiss. One last look. And then she was climbing onto the stage, her documents clutched against her chest, watching Samuel's figure grow smaller and smaller until it disappeared entirely. She didn't know that Thornton had been watching. She didn't know that he'd already sent men ahead to Cheyenne. She didn't know that the hardest fight was still to come. All she knew was that she loved Samuel Holbrook and his children, and she would do whatever it took to protect them, even if it cost her everything. The journey to Cheyenne took 4 days. 4 days of rattling bones, frozen feet, and sleepless nights spent clutching the documents that could save everything. Clara kept them inside her coat, pressed against her heart, as if Thornton's men might materialize from thin air and snatch them away. She didn't know how right she was to be afraid. Cheyenne was chaos. Bigger than Silver Creek, louder, full of strangers pushing past each other on crowded boardwalks. Clara felt small and exposed, a country mouse dropped into a den of wolves. But she'd faced worse. She'd survived Boston society. She'd survived rejection. She'd survived a Wyoming winter with 3 children who didn't trust her and a man who didn't want her. She could survive this. The territorial office was a squat brick building near the center of town. Clara pushed through the doors and found herself in a cramped room full of clerks and paperwork, the air thick with tobacco smoke and the smell of ink. "Help you, ma'am." The clerk behind the counter looked bored. Young, pimpled spectacles perched on a nose that was too small for his face. "I need to see Judge Harrison. It's urgent." "Judge Harrison don't see walk-ins. You gotta make an appointment." "Then I'll make an appointment." The clerk consulted a leather-bound book. "Next available is March 15th. That was 6 weeks away. 6 weeks of Thornton having free rein to destroy everything Samuel had built. That's not acceptable. I have evidence of crimes. Serious crimes. Attempted murder, intimidation, sabotage." The clerk's eyebrows rose slightly. "That's so." "Yes, that's so. And if Judge Harrison doesn't see this evidence soon, people are going to get hurt, maybe killed." "Look, lady, I don't make the rules. Judge Harrison's a busy man. He can't just drop everything because some rancher's wife has a complaint about her neighbor's fence." Clara felt her temper rising. This isn't about a fence. This is about a man who's been terrorizing an entire valley for years. A man who tried to kill my... She stopped. "My what? My employer. My fiancé. My family." Something flickered in the clerk's eyes. Interest, maybe. Or maybe just the entertainment of watching a desperate woman beg. "Tell you what," he said slowly. "Leave me your documents. I'll make sure the judge sees them." Clara's grip tightened on the papers inside her coat. Every instinct screamed not to let them out of her sight. "I'd prefer to present them myself." "Then come back in March." They stared at each other. Clara's mind raced. She could leave the documents and hope for the best. She could come back in March and pray Thornton hadn't burned the ranch to the ground by then. She could... "Is there a problem here?" The voice came from behind her, deep, authoritative, with a slight southern drawl. Clara turned. The man standing in the doorway was tall and silver-haired, dressed in a black suit that spoke of money and power. His eyes were sharp, assessing missing nothing. "Judge Harrison?" The clerk's tone changed instantly, becoming deferential. This lady was just leaving. Was she? Harrison's gaze moved to Clara. "You're the one making all the noise about attempted murder." "Yes, sir. Clara Brennan from Silver Creek." Silver Creek. Harrison's expression shifted. "That's Thornton territory." "Yes, sir. And Marcus Thornton is the reason I'm here." Something passed across Harrison's face. Recognition, maybe. Or understanding. "Come with me, Mrs. Brennan. Let's talk in my office." Clara followed him down a narrow hallway, her heart pounding. This was it. This was her chance. Harrison's office was small but comfortable. He gestured for her to sit and took his own seat behind a cluttered desk. "Now then, tell me about Marcus Thornton." Clara told him everything. The years of harassment, the buyout attempts, the sabotaged saddle, the cut fence posts and slashed feed bags, the meeting at the church and the coalition of ranchers who'd finally decided to fight back. Harrison listened without interrupting. When she finished, he was quiet for a long moment. "You have documentation of all this." Clara pulled the papers from her coat and handed them over. Testimonies from Pete Martinez and the others. Records of property damage. A statement from the doctor who'd treated Samuel's arm. Harrison examined each page carefully. His expression grew darker with every one. "This is serious," he said finally. "If even half of this is true, Thornton's looking at criminal charges. It's all true. Every word. I believe you." Harrison set the papers down. "But believing and proving are different things. Thornton has money, influence, the best lawyers in the territory. He'll fight this with everything he has." "I know, but we have the truth." "Truth doesn't always win, Mrs. Brennan. I wish it did." Clara's heart sank. "So you won't help us." "I didn't say that." Harrison leaned forward. "I said it won't be easy. There's a difference." He picked up the papers again. "I'll need time to review these properly. A few days at least. In the meantime, you should stay in town. Find a hotel. Keep your head down." "Keep my head down." "Thornton has eyes everywhere. If he knows you're here trying to build a case against him—" Harrison didn't finish the sentence. He didn't need to. Clara swallowed hard. "I understand." "Good. Come back in 3 days. I'll have answers for you then. 3 days. Clara nodded and rose to leave. "Mrs. Brennan." Harrison's voice stopped her at the door. "Be careful. Thornton's not a man who forgives easily, or forgets." "Neither am I," Clara said quietly, and left. She found a small hotel near the edge of town, cheap but clean. The room was barely bigger than a closet, with a narrow bed and a window that looked out on an alley. Clara locked the door, wedged a chair under the handle, and finally allowed herself to breathe. 3 days. She could survive 3 days. She wrote a letter to Samuel that night, telling him she'd arrived safely, that Judge Harrison was reviewing the evidence, that everything was going according to plan. She didn't mention her fear. Didn't mention the way her hands shook as she sealed the envelope. He had enough to worry about. She wouldn't add to it. The first day passed without incident. Clara stayed in her room, venturing out only to mail her letter and buy food from a nearby shop. She saw no one suspicious, heard nothing alarming. Maybe Harrison was wrong. Maybe Thornton didn't know she was here. The second day, she wasn't so lucky. She was returning from breakfast when she noticed them. 2 men standing across the street watching her hotel. They weren't doing anything obvious. Just standing, waiting. Clara's blood went cold. She forced herself to walk normally, to climb the stairs to her room without running. But the moment she was inside, she threw the bolt and pressed her back against the door, her heart hammering. They'd found her. Thornton's men had found her. She thought about running, packing her bag and slipping out the back, finding another hotel, hiding until her meeting with Harrison. But where would she go? She didn't know this city didn't have contacts or allies. And if they caught her on the street alone, no. She would stay. She would wait. She would trust that Judge Harrison would come through. The third day dawned gray and cold. Clara dressed carefully, checked the window. The men were gone, and made her way to the territorial office. Harrison was waiting for her. His expression was grim. "Close the door, Mrs. Brennan." Clara obeyed, her stomach dropping. "What's wrong?" "Someone broke into my office last night. The documents you gave me, they're gone." The world tilted. What? All of them. Every testimony, every record. Gone. Harrison's voice was tight with anger. "And I have a pretty good idea who's responsible. Thornton. Can't prove it. But yes." Clara sank into the chair across from his desk, her legs suddenly unable to hold her. Weeks of work. Dozens of testimonies. All the evidence they'd gathered gone. "We can get new testimonies," she said, but even she could hear the desperation in her voice. "Go back to Silver Creek, have everyone write new statements. That'll take weeks, months maybe, and in the meantime Thornton will be covering his tracks, intimidating witnesses, making sure no one talks. Clara pressed her hands to her face. All of this for nothing. She'd risked everything, left Samuel, and the children traveled 4 days in the freezing cold. There might be another way. She looked up. Harrison's expression had changed. There was something calculating in his eyes now, something that looked almost like hope. What way? The documents are gone, but the witnesses aren't. If we could get them to testify in person before Thornton has time to silence them. A hearing. A surprise hearing. Tomorrow. Here in Cheyenne. Harrison leaned forward. I have the authority to compel testimony in cases involving potential criminal activity. If we can get even a few of your witnesses here by tomorrow morning, I can put them on record. Official record that Thornton can't steal or destroy. Tomorrow? Clara's mind raced. That's impossible. Silver Creek is 4 days away. There's no way. Not by stage, no. But by horse riding hard, you could make it in 2 days. Maybe less if you change mounts along the way. I don't know if I can. You have to. Harrison's voice was urgent. This is your one chance, Mrs. Brennan. If you miss it, Thornton wins. He keeps terrorizing that valley, keeps hurting people, and no one ever holds him accountable. Clara thought of Samuel, of Emma, and Jack and Lily, of Pete Martinez and the shopkeeper, and all the others who'd risked everything to stand up. She thought of Thornton's men waiting outside her hotel, watching. I'll do it, she said. She left Cheyenne within the hour, riding hard, pushing her horse to its limits. The cold was brutal, the wind cutting through her coat like knives. But she didn't stop. Couldn't stop. Every mile that passed, she thought about what waited for her at the end. Samuel's face when he saw her. The children's arms around her waist. Home. She was halfway to Silver Creek when the riders appeared, 3 of them coming up fast from behind. Clara's heart seized. She urged her horse faster, but the animal was already exhausted, already flagging. Pull up, one of the riders shouted. Stop right there. Clara didn't stop. She bent low over the horse's neck and rode harder than she'd ever ridden in her life. But it wasn't enough. They caught her at a narrow point in the trail, blocking her path. Clara yanked on the reins, her horse nearly throwing her as it skidded to a halt. Mrs. Brennan? The lead rider pushed back his hat, revealing a face she didn't recognize. Hard eyes, a cruel smile. Mr. Thornton would like a word. I have nothing to say to Mr. Thornton. That's too bad. Because he has plenty to say to you. Clara's hand moved toward the shotgun Samuel had insisted she take. But before she could reach it, one of the other riders was beside her, grabbing her arm, yanking her from the saddle. She hit the frozen ground hard enough to knock the breath from her lungs. Pain exploded through her shoulder, her hip, her head. Careful with her, the lead rider said, dismounting. Mr. Thornton wants her alive. Clara struggled to her feet, her vision swimming. If you hurt me, Samuel will. Samuel will what? Come rescue you. The man laughed. By the time Holbrook finds out what happened, you'll be long gone. And so will any chance of that hearing tomorrow. They knew. They knew about the hearing, about the plan. Thornton had spies everywhere. You can't do this, Clara said, but her voice sounded weak even to her own ears. Watch us. They tied her hands and threw her over the back of a horse like a sack of grain. The world bounced and jolted as they rode, and Clara fought to stay conscious, to think. She didn't know where they were taking her. Didn't know what Thornton planned to do with her. But she knew one thing with absolute certainty. She was not going to die here. She was not going to let Thornton win, not when she finally had something worth living for. They rode for what felt like hours. Clara lost track of time, lost track of direction. The cold seeped into her bones until she couldn't feel her hands or feet. Her shoulder throbbed where she'd hit the ground and her head ached with every jarring step. Finally they stopped. Get her down! Rough hands pulled her from the horse and set her on her feet. Clara swayed but didn't fall. She forced herself to stand straight to look her captors in the eye. They were at a cabin in the middle of nowhere. No other buildings in sight. No witnesses. Inside. They pushed her through the door into a single room with a cold fireplace and a rough wooden chair. One of the men shoved her into it and retied her hands behind her back. "Mr. Thornton will be here in the morning," the lead writer said. "Get comfortable." They left, locking the door behind them. Clara heard them settling outside, talking in low voices, laughing. She was alone. For a long moment, Clara let herself feel the fear. Let it wash over her, through her. She was tied up in the middle of nowhere, captured by Thornton's men with no way to reach Samuel or anyone else. But then she thought about Lily's face the night of the nightmare, about Emma's fierce determination, about Jack's quiet courage, about Samuel's voice rough with emotion, telling her he loved her. She thought about the family waiting for her, the life she'd finally found after years of loneliness and rejection. And the fear transformed into something else, something harder, something that felt a lot like rage. She wasn't going to give up. She wasn't going to let Thornton destroy everything she'd built. She was going to find a way out of this. And then she was going to make him pay. Clara tested the ropes around her wrists, tight but not expertly tied. The men had been careless, assuming a city woman wouldn't know how to escape. They didn't know she'd spent 3 months volunteering at the hospital, watching surgeons work, watching how they tied bandages, how they secured splints. She'd learned to tie knots with her eyes closed, which meant she knew how to untie them too. It took time. Hours, maybe. The cold made her fingers clumsy, and the rope bit into her skin until she felt blood. But she didn't stop. Couldn't stop. Finally, the knot loosened. Clara pulled her hands free and nearly sobbed with relief. Now she needed a weapon. The room was sparse but not empty. A wooden chair. An iron poker by the cold fireplace. A small table with a chipped pitcher. Clara grabbed the poker and moved to the window. It was small, barely big enough for her to squeeze through, but it was her only option. The door was locked from the outside, and she could hear the guards talking just beyond it. She tested the window. Stuck. Frozen shut. Clara took a deep breath, wrapped her hand in her skirt to muffle the sound, and punched through the glass. Pain lanced up her arm. She ignored it. She knocked out the remaining shards, boosted herself up, and squeezed through the opening. The cold hit her like a wall. The night was pitch black, the wind howling. She couldn't see the guards, but she could hear them on the other side of the cabin. Clara ran. She didn't know where she was going, didn't know which direction led to help, and which led to more wilderness. But she ran anyway, the poker clutched in her bleeding hand, her breath coming in ragged gasps. Behind her she heard shouting. They'd discovered she was gone. Clara ran faster. She didn't know how long she ran. Minutes or hours, it all blurred together. The cold was numbing, and her feet caught on rocks and roots she couldn't see. She fell twice, 3 times, scrambling back up each time. And then, impossibly, she saw lights. A farmhouse in the distance, warm yellow windows glowing in the darkness. Clara stumbled toward it, her legs giving out just as she reached the porch. She pounded on the door with her bloody hand. "Please, please help me." The door opened, and a woman's face appeared. Older, weathered, with kind eyes that went wide at the sight of Clara. "Lord have mercy. Get inside, child. Quick." Clara collapsed into warmth and safety, and the last thing she heard before consciousness faded was the woman's voice, sharp with alarm. "Henry, saddle the horse. This girl needs a doctor." She woke to pain. Her hand was bandaged, her body wrapped in blankets, and a fire crackled nearby. For a moment she didn't know where she was. Then she remembered. The capture, the escape, the farmhouse. "Easy now." The older woman was there, pressing a cool cloth to Clara's forehead. "You've had quite an ordeal." "I have to." Clara tried to sit up and immediately regretted it. "I have to get to Silver Creek. There's a hearing. You're not going anywhere in this condition. You don't understand. People are depending on me. If I don't get there, if you try to ride in this state, you'll fall off your horse and freeze to death." The woman's voice was firm. "My husband's already gone to town to fetch the doctor, and he's sending word to Silver Creek. Someone named Holbrook, you were calling for him in your sleep." "Samuel." Clara's eyes filled with tears. "He's my—" She didn't know how to finish. "My employer, my fiancé. The man I love more than anything. I know what he is." The woman's voice softened. "Rest now. Help is coming." Clara wanted to argue, wanted to leap up and ride to Silver Creek herself, but her body had other ideas. The exhaustion was crushing, overwhelming, and despite her best efforts, she felt herself sliding back into darkness. The last thing she thought before sleep claimed her was a prayer. "Please let him come. Please let him find me. Please don't let it be too late." Samuel came for her at dawn. Clara woke to the sound of hoofbeats, dozens of them, pounding through the frozen earth like thunder. She pushed herself up, despite the pain, her heart racing, and then the door burst open, and he was there. Clara. Her name on his lips was a prayer and a curse and a sob all at once. He crossed the room in 3 strides and pulled her into his arms so tight she couldn't breathe. "You're alive. God, you're alive. Samuel." She buried her face against his chest, breathing him in. "Horses and leather and home. How did you find me?" The farmer's husband rode through the night, found Pete Martinez first, and Pete found me. Samuel pulled back his hands, cupping her face, his eyes wild with fear and relief. "When I heard what happened, when I heard Thornton's men had taken you—" His voice broke. Clara saw tears streaming down his weathered face, and she realized she'd never seen him cry before. Not once. "I thought I'd lost you," he whispered. "I thought— I'm here." She pressed her forehead to his. "I'm here, and I'm not going anywhere." The children were terrified. "Emma tried to saddle her own horse to come find you. Jack hasn't stopped praying since we got word. And Lily—" Samuel's breath hitched. "Lily keeps asking if you're going to leave like her mama did." Clara's heart shattered. "I would never—" I know you wouldn't." He kissed her forehead, her cheeks, her lips. "But we need to get home. Now, before Thornton realizes you escaped." "The hearing—" "Forget the hearing. You almost died, Clara. Nothing is worth that." "Everything is worth that." Clara pulled back, forcing him to look at her. "Samuel, if we give up now, Thornton wins. All of this, everything we risked, will be for nothing. I don't care about winning. I care about you. And I care about those children growing up in a valley controlled by a tyrant. I care about Emma and Jack and Lily having a future where they're not afraid." Clara's voice was fierce despite her exhaustion. "I didn't survive Boston and rejection and a Wyoming winter just to give up now." Samuel stared at her. Then slowly the corner of his mouth lifted. "You're the most stubborn woman I've ever met. That's why you love me." "God help me, it is." He sighed heavily. "All right, what's the plan?" Clara's mind was already racing. "The documents are gone, but Judge Harrison said if we could get witnesses to Cheyenne for a surprise hearing, that's a 4-day ride. 2 if we push hard. Harrison gave me until tomorrow morning." "That's impossible." "Maybe." Clara met his eyes. "But impossible is just another word for worth trying." Samuel was quiet for a long moment. Then he turned to the door where Clara could see a crowd of men on horseback waiting outside. "Pete," he called, "get in here." Pete Martinez appeared in the doorway, his weathered face creased with concern. "She okay?" "She's stubborn as a mule and twice as determined. Says we need to get to Cheyenne by tomorrow." Pete's eyebrows shot up. "Tomorrow, that's—" "Impossible, I know." Samuel looked at Clara, then back at Pete. "But she's right. If we don't do this now, Thornton will bury us. He'll silence the witnesses, destroy the evidence, and we'll never get another chance." So what do you want us to do? Samuel took a deep breath. Split up. Some of us ride to Cheyenne with Clara. The rest go back to Silver Creek and bring whoever's willing to testify. We meet at the territorial office tomorrow at dawn. That's a hell of a risk. It's the only chance we've got. Pete looked at Clara, then at Samuel, then at the men waiting outside. Finally, he nodded. All right, let's ride. They pushed the horses hard, harder than Clara had ever ridden in her life. The cold was brutal, the wind relentless, but she didn't complain. Couldn't complain. Not when Samuel was riding beside her, his jaw set with determination. Not when everything they'd built hung in the balance. They stopped only to change horses, trading their exhausted mounts for fresh ones at every station along the way. Clara's body screamed for rest, for warmth, for just a moment of peace. But she kept going. Samuel stayed close, watching her with worried eyes. You should rest. I'll rest when this is over. Clara. I mean it, Samuel. I didn't escape that cabin and walk through a blizzard just to give up now. He didn't argue again. But she felt his hand find hers in the darkness, squeezing tight. A promise. A lifeline. They reached Cheyenne as the sun was rising, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold. Clara was swaying in the saddle, barely conscious, but she forced herself to stay upright. The territorial office, she said. We have to... I know. Samuel steadied her with a hand on her arm. I've got you. They arrived to find chaos. The street outside the office was packed with people. Ranchers from Silver Creek who'd ridden through the night, townspeople who'd heard rumors of what was happening, even a few reporters from the Cheyenne newspaper. And standing at the center of it all was Judge Harrison. Mrs. Brennan. His voice carried over the crowd. You made it. Barely. Clara slid from her horse, her legs nearly buckling. Samuel was there immediately, supporting her. The witnesses. Inside, Pete's group arrived an hour ago with 6 of them, ready to testify. Harrison's expression was grim, but determined. We've also got something else. Something Thornton didn't expect. What? His son's death wasn't an accident. Clara's blood went cold. What do you mean? One of Thornton's former ranch hands came forward last night. Says he saw what really happened 5 years ago at the Holbrook place. Says Thomas Thornton didn't fall from his horse. He was pushed. Pushed by who? Harrison's voice dropped. By his own father. The world seemed to stop. Clara heard Samuel's sharp intake of breath beside her. That's impossible, Samuel said. Why would Thornton kill his own son? Money. Thomas was planning to leave, take his inheritance, start his own ranch far from his father's influence. Thornton couldn't stand losing control. Harrison's jaw tightened. He staged the accident, blamed you to cover his tracks, and he's been trying to destroy you ever since, not out of grief, but out of guilt. Clara felt sick. All these years, Samuel had carried the weight of believing he was responsible for a boy's death, and the whole time the real killer had been playing the victim. Can you prove it? She asked. The ranch hand is willing to testify. Along with everything else you've gathered, it should be enough. Harrison looked at her with something like respect. You started this, Mrs. Brennan. Now let's finish it. The hearing was unlike anything Clara had ever experienced. The territorial office was transformed into a makeshift courtroom, packed with witnesses and spectators, and at least 3 newspaper reporters scribbling furiously in their notebooks. Judge Harrison presided from behind his desk, his expression severe. And across the room, looking like a man who'd been dragged to his own execution, sat Marcus Thornton. He'd been arrested that morning, caught trying to flee the territory. Now he sat in chains, his silver hair disheveled, his fine clothes wrinkled and stained. He looked old, defeated, but his eyes still burned with hatred when they found Clara. You, he spat. You did this. No. Clara's voice was steady. You did this. I just made sure people found out. The testimonies took hours. Pete Martinez went first, describing years of intimidation and sabotage. The shopkeeper followed, then the other ranchers, each one adding another piece to the damning picture. And then the former ranch hand took the stand. His name was William Crane, and he'd worked for Thornton for 15 years before leaving in disgust. His voice shook as he described what he'd witnessed 5 years ago. Thomas was planning to leave. Told his father he was done, that he wanted nothing to do with the family business. Crane's eyes were haunted. Mr. Thornton lost his mind, said if Thomas left, he'd never see a penny of his inheritance. Thomas said he didn't care about the money. That's when Mr. Thornton... He stopped, swallowing hard. What happened next, Mr. Crane? Harrison prompted gently. They were at the Holbrook place. Thomas had gone to see the new foal he loved horses always had. Mr. Thornton followed him. I was nearby checking a fence line. I saw the whole thing. Crane's voice broke. He pushed Thomas into that horse, made it rear up, throw the boy. Thomas hit his head on a rock. Died right there in the dirt. The courtroom erupted. Thornton surged to his feet, his face purple with rage. Lies. He's lying. Sit down, Mr. Thornton. Harrison's voice was cold. You'll have your chance to speak. But Thornton wasn't listening. He was staring at Clara, at Samuel, at everyone who'd gathered to witness his downfall. You think this changes anything? His voice was barely recognizable, twisted with hatred. You think destroying me will save your pathetic little ranch? I'll burn it to the ground. You'll do nothing. Samuel stepped forward, his voice quiet but deadly. Because you're going to prison, Thornton. For murder. For attempted murder. For everything you've done to this valley. You can't prove... We already have. Samuel's eyes were ice. And even if we couldn't, even if you walked out of here a free man, you've lost. You've lost your reputation, your power, your hold on this community. Nobody's afraid of you anymore. Thornton's face crumpled. Just for a moment, beneath all the rage and hatred, Clara saw something else. Something that looked almost like grief. He'd killed his own son, his only child. And he'd spent 5 years trying to bury that guilt by destroying an innocent man. It was the saddest, most terrible thing Clara had ever witnessed. The verdict came swiftly, guilty on all counts. Thornton was sentenced to 25 years in the territorial prison, effectively a death sentence for a man his age. As they led him away in chains, he turned to look at Clara one last time. This isn't over, he said. Yes. Clara replied quietly. It is. The celebration lasted 3 days. The whole valley seemed to come together, gathering at the Holbrook Ranch to mark the end of an era. People brought food and drink and music, and for the first time in years, there was laughter echoing across the snow-covered hills. Clara stood on the porch, watching the festivities, trying to believe it was really over. That Thornton was gone. That they were safe. Penny, for your thoughts. Samuel appeared beside her, sliding an arm around her waist. I was thinking about how far we've come. 2 months ago, I stepped off a stage thinking my life was over. Clara leaned into him. Now look at us. Quite a journey. The hardest thing I've ever done. She turned to face him. And the most worth it. Samuel's eyes were soft as he looked at her. I never thanked you properly. For everything you did. For refusing to give up when I was ready to surrender. You don't have to thank me. This is my family too. Speaking of family, Samuel reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. I believe I asked you a question before you left for Cheyenne. You never gave me a proper answer. Clara's heart stuttered. Samuel? Clara Brennan. He opened the box to reveal a simple gold band, worn smooth with age. This was my mother's ring. She gave it to my father when they had nothing but hope and each other. They built a life together, a family, a home. His voice roughened. I want to build that with you, if you'll let me. Clara was crying. She couldn't help it. The tears streamed down her face as she looked at this man, this wonderful, stubborn, broken, beautiful man who'd somehow become everything she'd ever wanted. "Yes," she whispered. 1,000 times yes. He slid the ring onto her finger, and it fit perfectly, as if it had been waiting for her all along. Then he kissed her right there on the porch in front of God and the whole valley. And Clara heard cheering, heard the children screaming with joy, heard Emma's voice rising above the rest. "I knew it! I knew she'd stay!" They pulled apart laughing, and suddenly they were surrounded. Emma throwing her arms around Clara's waist, Jack grinning despite himself, Lily demanding to be picked up so she could see the ring. "Does this mean you're our mama now?" Lily asked. "For real?" Clara looked at Samuel, then at Emma and Jack, then back at Lily's hopeful face. "I've been your mama since the moment I decided to stay," she said softly. "The ring just makes it official." Lily considered this. Then she nodded solemnly. "Good. Because I already told everyone at church that you were my mama. I didn't want to be a liar." Clara laughed, pulling the child close. Over Lily's head, she met Samuel's eyes. He was smiling, really smiling, the kind of smile that transformed his whole face. They were married 2 weeks later in the same little church where the ranchers had first gathered to plan their resistance. Reverend Thomas presided, and half the valley showed up to witness it. Clara wore a simple white dress that Mrs. Henderson had helped her sew. Emma stood beside her as maid of honor, radiating pride. Jack and Lily sat in the front row, dressed in their best clothes, trying very hard to behave. When Clara walked down the aisle, she saw Samuel's face, the wonder there, the love, the overwhelming gratitude, and she knew she'd finally found what she'd been searching for her whole life. Not just a husband, not just a home, a place to belong. "I, Clara Brennan, take you Samuel Holbrook to be my husband," she said, her voice steady despite the tears. "To have and to hold from this day forward, for better or worse, for richer or poorer, in sickness and in health, to love and to cherish until death parts us." Samuel's voice was rough when he repeated the vows. His hands shook when he slid the ring onto her finger. And when Reverend Thomas pronounced them husband and wife, he kissed her like a man who'd been drowning and finally found air. The reception went long into the night. There was dancing and drinking and more food than Clara had seen in one place since leaving Boston. The children fell asleep in a pile by the fire, exhausted and happy. And when the last guest had gone and the house was quiet, Samuel carried Clara across the threshold of their bedroom now, and set her down gently. "Welcome home, Mrs. Holbrook." Clara looked around the room. Sarah's room once, still holding echoes of the woman Samuel had loved and lost. But Clara didn't feel like an intruder anymore. "It doesn't bother you?" she asked. "Being here where you were with her?" "No." Samuel's voice was soft. "Sarah would have wanted this, wanted me to be happy, wanted the children to have a mother again." He cupped Clara's face in his hands. "She would have loved you. I wish I could have known her. You know her through the children, through Emma's stubbornness and Jack's kindness and Lily's endless optimism." Samuel smiled. "The best parts of Sarah live on in them, and now you're part of that too." Clara kissed him, then pouring everything she felt into it. Gratitude, love, hope. The overwhelming joy of finally being home. Spring came slowly to Silver Creek. The snow melted, revealing green grass and wildflowers. The creek ran fast with meltwater, and the cattle grew fat on the new growth. Clara planted a garden where Sarah's had been using seeds she'd saved and ordered from a catalog back east. She didn't know if anything would grow. She was a city woman after all, with no experience in such things. But she tried anyway. Because trying was all any of them could do. The children thrived. Jack's cough faded with the warm weather, and by summer, He was running and playing with an energy that made Clara's heart sing. Emma softened slowly, her defensive walls crumbling until she laughed freely and called Clara Mama without any hesitation. And Lily, beautiful, hopeful. Lily never stopped believing that everything would work out in the end, because that was what Lily did. She believed. One evening in late May, Clara stood on the porch watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and pink. The children were playing in the yard, their laughter carrying on the warm breeze. Samuel was in the barn finishing the evening chores. This was her life now. This ranch, this family, this man who'd rejected her and then chosen her and then loved her with everything he had. She'd come to Wyoming broken and desperate, convinced she was worthless because she couldn't bear children. She'd been told her whole life that a woman's value lay in her womb, that without children, she was incomplete. They'd all been wrong. She had 3 children who called her Mama. 3 children who'd needed her exactly as she was, not for what her body could produce, but for what her heart could give. Love, patience, courage, hope. That was her legacy. That was her gift. Samuel appeared from the barn wiping his hands on his trousers. When he saw her standing on the porch, he smiled that rare, beautiful smile that still made her heart skip. "What are you thinking about, Mrs. Holbrook?" "About how wrong I was. About everything." "How so?" Clara turned to face him, the sunset warm on her back. "I spent my whole life believing I was broken, that because I couldn't have children, I was somehow less than, less valuable, less worthy of love. And now I know the truth." She reached for his hand, lacing their fingers together. "Family isn't about blood or biology. It's about showing up every day, choosing to love even when it's hard, being brave enough to stay when leaving would be easier." Samuel pulled her close. "You stayed when I gave you every reason to leave." "You gave me every reason to stay. You just didn't know it yet." Emma's voice rang out across the yard. "Mama. Papa, come look. Jack caught a frog." Clara laughed, the sound full and free. "We're being summoned." "So we are." Samuel kissed her forehead. "Ready." She looked at him. This man who'd been so broken when she arrived, who'd rebuilt himself alongside her, who'd taught her that second chances were real and possible and worth fighting for. "I've been ready my whole life," she said. "I just didn't know what I was waiting for." They walked down to join their children, hand in hand, the sunset blazing behind them. Clara Brennan had traveled 400 miles to become a mail-order bride. She'd been rejected for being barren, stranded in a frozen wilderness, and told she was worthless. But she'd found something better than acceptance. She'd found purpose. She'd found family. She'd found herself. And in the end, the woman who couldn't bear children had become the mother of 3, not through her body, but through her heart. Not by blood, but by choice. And that Clara knew was the strongest kind of family there was.